Hello and welcome to Sidequest. This is our weekly video game show here at Geekverse, and I'm your host, Dylan Muss, and I have with me the Clown Prince of Ragnarok, Travis. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. Coming off. That's my fire effect right
Oh,
there.
okay.
So yeah.
Could have been like water, could have been steam, but I like it.
Yeah,
Fireworks.
yeah. Going with the thing I had the most trouble with, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, in this game. But
Sure.
yes, no, I'm doing well. We were just talking off air, coming off a long weekend, saw lots of family, so that's always a good time. We actually did at the in-laws roast, like for hot dogs and s'mores and stuff like that.
Okay.
So that was
I thought you
good.
meant like a roast, like one of the you pick like an uncle and do a roast of that
Yeah,
uncle.
it's Emily's birthday tomorrow, so we just roasted her, the whole family,
Yeah.
me and the kids. You know, the kids had some really banger jokes, some really inappropriate ones I was surprised about. So, no, it was good. Yesterday, I was telling you on air or off air, I was starting to get a headache. Yesterday, I was not doing good because I think your boy ate a little too much food. It was
Oh, okay.
I was out by like 10. I was like, it
Right.
was just one of those where it's like, luckily I didn't get sick, and luckily just sleep ended it. But it's one of those where like, oh, I gotta get to bed right now. It's just I think too much greasy stuff, burgers and wings and other stuff. So my eyes were too big for my stomach.
Yes,
So
that happens.
but not
Well,
good.
you mentioned that tomorrow is Emily's birthday. It's a big day for multiple reasons. One, Emily's
Exactly.
birthday, of course. Also, I mean, we're talking about Hellblade today. The sequel comes out tomorrow, May 21st. We're, of course, recording this day early when people are hearing this. But also, most importantly to me, sorry, Emily, is that my game,
Me too.
Potion Problem, is finally releasing. It's ready to go. I just got to hit the button. I'm going to wake up in the morning, click that button, and it's going to be live, and people can check it
Wow.
out. So, of course, when this episode is out there,
Yes.
people can go pick it up. It's on Steam. You can check it out. Check out the trailer
There'll be
there.
a link below, I'm guessing, right, in the
Yes,
episode.
of course.
Perfect. There you go.
Yeah, link below. So go check it out. Yeah, very excited for people to play
Yeah.
that and let me know what you think.
Yes.
If you get stuck, let me know. If you get any bugs or glitches, let me know. But hopefully it's a pretty smooth sailing. I've tried my best, done a fair amount of testing, so hopefully that goes well, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's exciting. Finally here. The day has come. Well, I guess by the time this recording, it's already came, but
Yes.
still, but yeah, check out those links. They'll be on the rest of the month's episode as well too, because
Right on.
that's exciting. That's a big step. So I'm excited for you. I'm glad it's out there into the wild. Now you can not put it to bed because I'm sure it's still
Yes.
always with you. But in a sense, it's a
No, I'm ready.
Frodo.
I'm ready to put it to bed.
Yeah,
2.5
see?
years on it.
Yeah.
I'm good to go. I'm ready to move on. To the
I
next
get that
thing.
feeling because I remember like right when we promoted a bit and I talked about the film, I was like, yeah, I don't need to see this thing for a while. I don't want I loved every second. We worked really hard, and I've not looked at it since its release because it's just like I need to need space from it. But it's
Exactly.
a fun game, so go check it out. As I said before, I love the vibe, and there's obviously you've talked about it, but there's some just very cool items that I like. My big favorite is the Bigfoot. That's
The
my
big old
favorite.
foot.
The
Yeah,
big old
nice.
foot. Yeah,
I'm
I
glad you
that
like the
one.
foot.
Yeah.
I did have someone say that like the foot fetish people are gonna like this game at one point, which is one
yeah.
of my favorite like tidbits from playtesting. One of my favorite points of feedback.
You got to get that in QT's hand when he's retired. You got to get him this
Yes.
game, and
I
he's
should have
gonna-
sent him a copy. And,
yeah, dang. I'll look in the playbook for his email.
yes.
But yeah, go download it, go buy it, go do all that stuff.
All that stuff.
Yeah.
You can also join our Discord. You can join our Patreon to get episodes early and ad free. This week, I guess we're doing a review of Furiosa. That should be fun. I
Yep.
got my tickets, so I didn't
Yeah.
join on the retro, but I'm joining for the latest movies. That should
Which
be
is
fun.
good. You're subbing for Taylor because Taylor's not joining us, and he was on all the episodes.
I was on the
so-
fence, and then I heard he was going to be away, so I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you know what? I'll sub in there and
Yeah.
fill in his place." We also we're going to do a news episode this week. Anything else you'd like to promote?
No, I think the biggest thing it's not going to be the second episode, but the biggest thing on the Patreon for like early stuff is we just started the Alien Retro, and as we've talked about before, there's going to be a Sidequest episode of that. So I'm not sure if
Yes.
that'll be early or not, but either way, the Alien Retro has started. So we've done Mad Max and we did 8, so that's going to be the next. That's kind of last one for the year. There'll be a couple one-offs like Beetlejuice and a Christmas one and Halloween one, but for our big retros, that's kind of it until next year once we start doing like Fantastic Four and Superman, which I'm excited because those are ones that we haven't. F4 we almost did during COVID, and then tail end
I'm excited
movies
for
and
that,
TV shows
yeah.
started come back. So yeah, there's a couple good ones, but yeah, no, just go.
Yeah,
over there.
I forget if I announced that last week, but yeah, we will be doing along with the Alien
okay.
movies, Alien Isolation, which I'm very
Yeah.
excited. I've never actually played the game, or maybe I played for like a few minutes or something. But yeah, it's always been high in that backlog list, and now that I'm deep into like horror games and stuff, I think it's a perfect
Yeah.
time. So I
Taylor's
don't know when that
already
episode's
firing
going
up
to
this
happen,
weekend. Yeah.
but definitely checking it out in the next few months, and sometime before August that episode will drop. Kind of up in the air right now.
But before we play COD together, Teo said he was already firing it up. So I'm not. I have to check with him, and because I know he owns the game, but I have to check with him on Game Pass. Because if it is, maybe it's cheap. If there's a way to play it, I'd like to get on there. But
Okay.
yeah,
yeah, we
already,
do have lots of time, so
Yeah.
I mean, no rush to get to
He's
it.
getting early way too. He's ready. He needed an excuse to
Hopefully,
play
he
the
takes
game
notes.
again.
Otherwise, he can go as early as he
Oh,
wants.
I think he
Maybe-
has like decades or not. However that long that game's been out, I think he has that many. He's been waiting to talk about that game.
Yeah,
so.
it's one of those ones for him for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun stuff. So yeah, just stay tuned to the feed, subscribe, all that stuff. You can see all that. So today we are talking about Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice from Ninja Theory, which is going to be a very fun conversation. Before we do that, actually, though, I wanted to do a very quick rundown of Ninja Theory in their previous games because I found it to be really interesting. There's some things I did not expect to see in there, and there's also, I think, things that are going to be important when we get back and actually talk about Hellblade. So the studio, it's a British studio, it's founded in 2000. Their first game was this game called Kung Fu Chaos, which I never heard of until recently, and probably someone was mentioning it in relation to the Hellblade 2 coming out. But you should, definitely look up a screenshot of this game. It's very funny. It's got a very cartoony art style.
Oh yeah, I like this guy already.
Kind of like chibi sort of art-ish, I guess. But
Xbox era.
Older game. Probably came out in early 2000, and very much an action game. Their game after that was Heavenly Sword, which I don't know. I don't know why it took me so long to put together that Heavenly Sword and Hellblade. You know, like heaven, hell, sword, blade. Like the games have nothing to do with each other, but I love that there's kind of, they're not even spiritual successors or anything. There's really no relation, but I love that the names within these games, like the studio's history, are kind of have some sort of fun note to them. I think we talked about it on the PlayStation All-Star roster thing. I think we mentioned it during that conversation.
Yeah, and just that cover, it's a very scantily clad woman with a big sword. I feel like this was talked about a lot, which is very funny because I feel like this game is very much less so of that. It's not like this feels like they're trying to sell it off of sex here. But yeah, okay. Yeah, we've definitely a couple times. This has been around the Geekverse area.
Yeah, definitely. So once again, very much an action game. And I think that one is really deep in like some sort of mythology, not the same like Norse Greek mythology that we have here in Hellblade, but it seems like maybe there's a bit of a pattern there for them. Their game after that is called Enslaved Odyssey to the West, which is also one I hadn't really heard of, but it's like a post-apocalyptic setting. And looking at screenshots and stuff, I want to check this game out. I think that one looks interesting. I would like to check out Heavenly Blade or Heavenly Sword. I'm already mixing them. Heavenly Sword as well. But yeah, they have some of these older games of theirs actually do look interesting, and I don't know how easy it is to find them, but they seem pretty cool. And once again, all action, very actiony games.
Yeah, they are in this category. Unfortunately, they're in this that cover. I feel like I've seen a bunch of times in my life, but never played it. But I remember because it's so green. This cover, like it's very, and even the game when you're looking at screenshots, lots of it's very green and
which
very
makes it is post-apocalyptic, but I guess it's not like Fallout post-apocalyptic. It's more like just the Earth has grown back, sort of thing. So
well, and that's funny because it's kind of like what you're talking about Furiosa. Like they do that Mad Max where it's like they have like heavy oranges and blues there. So that's I guess what they took was like, well, we're gonna do heavy greens and teals. So.
And something I found interesting in looking through those games is both Heavenly Sword and Enslaved Odyssey of the West had mocap and maybe also voice performances from the great Andy Serkis.
Really?
Who also is a fun fact. When Hellblade came out and Melina Jurgens won the Game Award for performance in the game, Andy Serkis is the one that presented that award to her. He was at the Game Awards and he did that, which I never realized that connection before, that he has a very deep connection with this studio. So it's funny that for Game Awards that they picked him to do the presentation to her and give her the award. But kind of a fun fact there. And then after that, they made DMC Devil May Cry, so not the original one, but a game in that series. So once again, very character action sort of game. And then they made a game called Fight Back, which is just like an iOS, looks like a 2D kind of beat 'em up sort of game. Jumping into the mobile market there. And then I don't know if they were the sole developer or just a support studio, but they worked on Disney Infinity. I think it was 3.0 I saw. So I don't know.
That sounds familiar, just the name and being attached to this.
Did you play that?
We played them all. We played,
oh.
that 3.0 was when, because they had the original, I think 3.0 was starting to get more into Marvel stuff. I think it was there from the beginning.
Was there a lot of action in that game? Like combat?
Yeah,
I never
it
really knew what those
depends.
games were about.
It depends. Like the Marvel ones and Star Wars were mostly all action, and the Pirates of the Caribbean was mostly action. That had some puzzle too, but that had action, very basic action. But
Okay.
not saying that Hellblade has basic action, but to the extent that I don't think it's anything that was out of their purview to do. So
Mm-hmm.
that would make sense. I can't remember what they were doing. It sucks. They might have been a part of. They were working on an X-Men line, but when that game got canceled, they canceled the line. So
Oh,
Ninja
that's
Theory
too
could have
bad.
been working on that. Yeah, but there's a lot of canceled stuff. So okay, that's
Mm-hmm.
interesting.
After that, they worked on this game called Dext, which is a VR game. And then comes Hellblade. I didn't say the years for all these, but you can kind of piece it together. From 2000, Hellblade came out in 2017. And then after that, they did 2 more VR games, actually. So I never realized that they had done a decent amount in VR. But I think with kind of the immersive nature of what Hellblade is, it makes sense that they had done some of that. So the next one was called Nicodemus Demon of Banishment, which is a very mouthful kind of name. But from what I could tell, it seems like more of like a maybe Pokemon Go sort of type of game with like I guess maybe more AR than VR. And then they did a game called Star Wars VR Vader Immortal, which I had never heard of.
I've heard good things about that.
Okay,
I have.
okay.
Yeah, that
Nice.
I've never played it, but I heard lots of good things just even with the story beats as well. So that's just like I'm not big into VR, but if you're telling me these people made VR, that would make me more inclined to do it because, like you said, how immersive just even this game is. I feel like they could knock that out of the park. And all I heard about Vader Immortal back in the day was good things. So
Yeah. I'm trying to. Okay, so and then after that was Bleeding Edge, which is that multiplayer combat game that I think the servers are already offline for it. It did not do very well, but I think because just looking it up quickly, Ninja Theory was acquired by Microsoft in 2018, and I think Bleeding Edge came out in 2018. So that was the first game that came out once they had been acquired, though it probably started development before they were acquired.
I've never seen this game. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think it's still up there on Game Pass, but like at some point the game, like it was multiplayer only, so it's gonna get kicked off there at some point. And then there's like just quite a few years off. Like that was 2018, and then here we finally have here in 2024 the release of Senua's Saga Hellblade 2, which isn't that weird that the first game is called Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice, and the second one is called Senua's Saga Hellblade 2. Like they put the title at the front for one game and then at the end for the other game. I don't know if that's like intentionally some weird artsy psychosis commentary thing that they're doing or why, but it's a very weird choice, and I can't recall any other game really doing that, especially for just a duology of games.
Yeah, that's just a very strange, like, not to say this in a negative way other than a few things. It feels like they don't have like a big identity. Like they're not all these games can really link together other than maybe some mocap and that sort of stuff. But like you look at that history of games from the start of the Xbox to now, that's a whole wild, weird type of journey. And not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm not saying that probably sound more negative not having an identity, but just like usually you look at some studios, some developers, and it's okay, they make these type of games or it's this type of genre where this is all over the map.
I think the through line for me is just like action games, like combat
Yeah.
heavy games. That seems to be the thing. And then in the last few years with the VR, Hellblade is where they've maybe taken a deviation, but then like, I don't know, there's still combat in Hellblade. Bleeding Edge was still like a combat only game. So it is a very eclectic set of games, and then like, yeah, working with Disney, working with Star Wars, working with Devil May Cry, and then just like a bunch of original IP mixed there in there too. So it is strange. And then we know that another project they're working on is called Project Morrow, which I don't know. We've got like a teaser for it, and the only way I could describe it is that it's like OD. Like that's the only way. Like it seems like it's going to be.
To me.
Yeah, it seems like it's going to be a live action thing, maybe more movie than game, but probably still a game because it'll be on Game Pass and whatnot. So I don't know. I don't even know how to describe that one, but we haven't seen much of it because I think they've been, marketing Senua's Saga since that's been the big one to come out here. But I'm sure we'll start hearing about that maybe next year or the year after.
And at the time of this recording today, they said, which is May 20th, they said that they're working on a new game additional to that too. So,
okay, cool.
Yeah, so obviously because there's lots of fears
That makes
after
sense.
lots of the studios and whatnot, lots of people brought up this studio as like, man, smaller one, like what does it go? And they say as of right now, they're working on a game additional to the one you're talking about. So, and I don't think they made it sound like it's like Hellblade 3 or anything like that. It sounded like it was something different. So I think probably Hellblade 3 will probably depend on what happens this go around, or maybe they don't want it. Who knows? Maybe the Hellblade 2 ends in a way where it's just definitive for a bit. So
Yeah. So yeah, as we look through the history of this, like I have not played any of their games before, so
Nope,
this has
me
been
either.
fun to jump in. Well, other than Disney Infinity for you,
Right, Infinity. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I did play Infinity. Yeah,
which
that's a
once again,
weird
I don't
thing.
know if they were the sole developer on that or if they were like a support studio.
That's
So
probably like a helping hand. Yeah.
yeah, to some extent. But anyway, that takes us here into Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. Um, I want to hear, I guess, from you. I want to know, what did you think this game was before you went into it? Um, and then what did you think of it?
Yeah, I think because I had seen lots of previews and I'd always wanted to play it. And this game, at first, it was PlayStation and Xbox, right? The very
I
first
think
one,
it was
Hellblade?
actually a PlayStation exclusive when it first came out,
Right,
and
I
then
think
ported
that's
to
what it was,
Xbox,
yeah.
and then they got acquired, and then now that's kind of pushed. And then I
Of
very much
course.
could see the sequel coming to Xbox as another
For
one of those,
sure.
or
Yeah.
sorry, to
Or
PlayStation
PlayStation.
as one of those
Yeah.
games. But
Yeah.
yeah, day one Game Pass, of course.
Yeah, so for me, I had seen it and I don't know why I hadn't. I think the interest came later because I feel like almost much like this game, the marketing wasn't that much. It felt like it was more of a word of mouth thing that people kept talking about the game, but I never saw it blow up. And I never talked to anybody either of like, it's not like, oh, I hear this good buzz and same thing, like same, I haven't dived into it, but like Divers, for example, like Kirkland got that, sold me. I haven't made that jump to buy it. I want to, but even then I hadn't talked to anybody that I knew personally that would maybe talk me into, oh, you got to get this, especially maybe knowing what I like or dislike. So I'd heard really good things. It felt like it was kind of like a sleeper hit the year it came out, as far as seeing, she won that performance. And I don't know if I saw it on like a lot of like the game of the years, but as far as like nominees or shout outs. So that was it. It was always okay. It's on, and that's why I'm here today. It's on the list of I want to try. And I think I knew because all I kept hearing about was the audio design was really good. So like, of course, sometimes you hear that with a Call of Duty game, and you kind of go, okay, I get that because the World War stuff and everything. With this, people just talk about how specific, like, audio was very important and just the vibe it went. So I thought it was more artsy. I thought it was a bit more, and this is not a negative or positive, probably a bit more on the action side, a bit more not closer to God of War, but something like that. And then I think as time went on, and then I saw stuff for number 2, I definitely went, okay, it's not that type. There's probably combat in it. Like kind of what we got here is what I expected. So that's kind of what I thought of. I thought it was some sort of smaller game. Like luckily, all the things I thought were this game. I don't think I knew how kind of trippy it was going to be and heady it was going to be. I kind of figured there was a message because I felt like people talked about this in like a games for impact sort of way, not in that category, but just in a way where lots of plot elements are, you could argue, supernatural or dealing with mental health in a way, right?
Yeah,
So
I mean, the first credit as you open this game up is mental health advisor or
Yes,
something like
right?
that, which
Yeah.
like even before director or actors or anything, which was like very that stood out to me big time because you don't ever see that in movies or games or TV or anything.
Yeah, so I think it's what I expected, but it just went even harder than I expected. I didn't think it was going to be even as heady because I think even the previews we've seen for Hellblade 2, like I think it's like there's like a giant sleeping and they got to go past it, like that very first showcase, the ones I've seen. It looks like there's stuff, but I didn't think it was as there's many times in the game that you could argue what's real, what's not. There's some sections that might not be real at all, So I didn't think it was going to be as much as that. So that was kind of my expectation. So kind of what I expected, but a little more.
Okay. Sorry, and how and what did you think of the?
Okay, I wasn't sure if you want to tell if I liked it. Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. It's funny that you brought up the whole like that next game there looks like OD or whatnot. Because to me, this is I think maybe a little more, but this is what I talk about anytime Hideo was like, oh, we're gonna make a live like a game, new experience combo thing. I still think this is a video game, but this is something where I'm like, man, I feel like Odie is gonna be like this. There's even times Death Stranding is, but I feel like Death Stranding doesn't cross the lines that this game does. As far as there's literally people that are live action or they're live action animated live action.
Yeah.
It's like an uncanny valley sort of thing with the deep fake. It's kind of like that. So there's lots of moments that take you out in a good way though. Nothing that like that looks bad. Just like, okay, what am I seeing here? And very trippy. But no, I really liked it. Once I played it, because at first I was playing and I'm like, oh, why don't more people talk about this game? And then I think I understood as I completed or got more near like the third section is it reminds me of Death Stranding in one way where the gameplay is much more of a a gaming loop, right? There's lots of combat. There's tons of cutscenes, but there's combat and there's like puzzles and there's kind of little things you have to do along the way. Death Stranding, there's sometimes that is just like a cinematic experience. But I think because there is so much weirdness and there is times where it is just almost like we're going to go nearly 10 minutes of just a speech and a cutscene, or you're not going to do much. I can see why I don't think this game ever blew up, because at first I was going, oh, why don't more people talk about it? But I see that this might not be everyone's cup of tea, the same way as Death Stranding, right? I think people would play this and no one would say, oh, it's a bad game. But I could see someone going like, you know what? A couple hours in, even though it's a short game, this is just too heavy at times. Like, especially I think at the beginning, it looks like a God of War Northman type of game. Like, yeah, it could be hack and slash, but it's way more deep and emotional. It is a heavy, at times kind of depressing game, especially, and there's good moments of the character's journey, but overall, no, I really liked it. Kind of I think what blew me away was some of the visuals, and especially in the back half or maybe middle and on, some of the visual areas we go to, because the first chunk of the game is very not samey, but it's a lot of wooded cement green area, and that's fine. It all looks really good, but it's just like variations of that. So I'm like, okay, this looks good. But then once we get to certain like places that look almost like hell, you're going into water, you're going into swamps. Like that's what I really like. In the small amount of time, you get a good variety of the environments and whatnot. So I think what hit it up for me was the more heady kind of out there, otherworldly sort of scenarios that happen. And I always am a sucker for the what's real, what's not, if they do it in a distinct way. So no, I really, really enjoyed this one. I'm very impressed by what they did. And it's, I wish I had played it sooner, but yeah, I can understand the why it might not be everyone's cup of tea, because even the combat, you do could have unlocked stuff along the way, but it's pretty basic, and that's stuff where, not that I ever got bored, but there's times where that's where I actually wouldn't play a long chunk, because there's times where you do a big combat section, and if you go to another one, it is just a lot of the same. You 2 attacks, parry, you unlock a few other things along the way, but it's very basic, but that's not what it's there for, right? So
yeah, definitely. And so it sounds like you have the interest level to jump into the sequel here. Will you be jumping in day one? Week one?
I think maybe week one. I don't know where. The only thing is, like, I'm not sure who is on Sidequest next week. I'm camping next week, so that's where I don't know what the actual play time I'm going to get.
We did a review 2 weeks from now?
Yeah, we could do 2 weeks from now. Yeah, I
Nice.
could do that. Let me just hang on. Let me just quickly
Whatever
look.
I have in that week, I'll kick it around or
yeah.
somewhere else.
What is 2 weeks? Yeah, no, I should be good. Yeah, no, that's
Nice.
we got nothing planned right now. So yeah, give me 2 weeks and do that one, because I'd want to put the full amount, because I feel like I don't know how long this one's gonna be.
The sequel is apparently about the same runtime as this one.
Yeah,
so that's
but
good.
even then, I would hate to come in at only 2 hours, because I feel like the beginning of the game is going to be.
This one's so short that it's worth it to wait a little bit longer. And do a full
I'm like, what am I going to be able to
discussion
add for the 2 hours? Especially because I feel like I'm not sure what they're going to do. Are they going to do your favorite game system, Dylan, where they go back and you got to relearn some of those powers or relearn some of those skills?
There's so little that you unlock in this game that I feel like you can kind of just pick up.
I know, but because it has a lot to do with time, and it could be like, well, this is the beginning of this story. Or,
yeah.
So, but I'll be there.
Very cool. So I had a similar experience as you, where it's like, man, this game kind of very much slipped under the radar. And we talked about Game Awards back in 2017.
Yeah.
So like I obviously knew this game existed, but I feel like I didn't even think about it until years later on, and hearing the mental health angle of it sounded interesting, but I never even knew what the gameplay was. I don't even think I realized it was like a third-person game until seeing more of the marketing push for the second game and seeing, okay, well, I'm seeing footage of this, so I'm sure the first game's a lot like this. Didn't even realize that, this game has combat in it until, once again, seeing combat sequences in those trailers. So somehow, this game really went under the radar for me, which, as you mentioned, I'm like surprised about, because this to me feels like a Sony AAA first-party game with just like, much shorter. That's really the only difference, though, is that it is a shorter game. Otherwise, it feels like it would fit right in with that kind of catalog of games, which is why it makes sense as like a PS4 exclusive. It's another good one that they added to the, as a launch title, or not a launch title for them, but exclusive with them back in the day. And so, I kind of came in with very little expectations. I guess I've seen more of these trailers of the sequel now, so I had an idea of what we're dealing with here. But I had a good time with this game. I'm definitely not as hot on it as you are, and I think it really ebbed and flowed for me. There was moments where I was just totally digging it, and there was like a couple hours in a row where I'm like, damn, this game's amazing. and I'm loving it. But then, like you can really break this game down into like, I'll say like 3 sections where there's like walking around and story stuff. And even though this is a very story focused game, there aren't too many just like super long cutscenes where you're out of it. Like there's a lot of dialogue that happens. In fact, most of it happens while you're just like walking places.
Yeah.
So you're getting that movement still, which is nice. So that's like a big part of the game. The combat's another big part of the game, which I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed the combat from kind of start to finish. But the part that really, really, really bummed me out and dragged down the game was the puzzles. I think they kind of suck, and they really are just there to pad the game out and make the game longer. There were a couple sequences where I thought it worked well, but for the most part, it's kind of doing like a witness type thing where it's like, oh, you got to witness crazy things in the environment and put like weird perspective puzzles
put these
together.
trees together with a wall.
Yeah, but I don't think it works very well at all. And the way that works for a game like Superliminal, which is a puzzle game all about that sort of mechanic, or a game like The Witness, where there's so much other stuff you can do that if you don't see the one puzzle in front of you, you can go do a million other things. But this game's like, no, you got to see this one very specific puzzle, or else you can't do anything. And that really dragged for me. There was a couple moments when I just used a walkthrough because I'm like, I don't even want to. Like, the movement is so slow that to go around and experiment and try and things and look for things was not a fun experience for me. And yeah, I think there are certain puzzles too where it's like, oh, this is a really cool idea. I like seeing how these different trees line up and making a letter. But then it's like, okay, but then I do it 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 times, and by those like 3 or 4 or 5th time, I'm like, I'm sick of these puzzles. And I feel like that was kind of the case for everything. You could even say the same for the combat. Like it doesn't really change. There's very few enemy types. You don't really unlock anything. But for some reason, with the runtime of this game, the combat worked for me the whole way through. The puzzles definitely did not. So because they're such a big part of the game, and this game is so short, it definitely dragged the experience down, which is too bad, because I think if it really had just focused on the story, the narrative, done a couple of those perspective puzzles, because it ties in with the story, and then like had the same amount of combat it had, I think this would have been a really top tier game for me, up in that higher echelon. But I don't think it's going to end up there when it's all said and done. With that being said, I'm still very excited for the sequel, and I hope that I don't know if this was a shared thought by a lot of reviewers or players and stuff, that people don't like the puzzles. So I'm not sure if that's something they're even looking to change or if it's going to be more of the same. But since the game is pretty short, I can easily get through it for the other good parts of it. So yeah, I enjoyed the game, had a good time with it. I'm excited to talk about it because there's a lot of crazy, weird, interesting stuff that occurs in this shorter runtime of a game. So I think from here on out, we're just going to crack open the spoiler gates. This game's several years old. It's pretty short. So yeah, from this point forward, if you don't want any spoilers, pause, go play the game because it's pretty short. It's on Game Pass. Come back and join us for the rest of the discussion here, and join us for the sequel as well. So how about we take a quick break, and we'll be right back to get into these spoiler thoughts. Okay, we are back. I think I maybe want to start by just talking a little bit about the aesthetics of this game, like particularly the visuals. Like such a beautiful game, even though it's 7 years old at this point. Just like really top quality, and because it's a smaller scale game, they can really focus on all these environments. But I thought from start to finish, whether it was those kind of forest areas as you were talking about, kind of Blair Witchy sort of stuff, versus the like that hell sequence, man, when you're going down,
is top tier. I'm
like all the lava pools, all the bodies, like
the hands
the arms,
reaching out to get you.
Fingers. Oh, it's so good.
I'm
and
surprised
then
I never got
too,
spoiled on that either. Like up to this point, I thought I would have saw a screenshot or someone's like, "Look at this moment." Like just not enough people played this. I don't think
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, sequences like that, and then when you go to like Helheim and these kind of more fantasy type areas too. It just looks amazing from start to finish. And then I think they did a good job of having trippy things with the visuals that match with the feeling of like what's real, what's not. Like particularly the way the lights blur. There are certain sequences when the lights are just all over the place, super wonky. Like you can still tell what's going on. You can tell where you're going. But there's just some really cool effects that kind of throw everything off. And I don't know, once again, put you in the shoes of the character. Like that's one thing I love about this game, is how there's no UI, and it's just very immersive. Everything's just from Senua's perspective, and even if there are UI type things, like they do it through like the characters in your head, like telling you, someone's behind you. That could have been a UI thing, but instead it's just someone talking to you. And so I think they just nailed it on that kind of visual part of the game.
Which that annoyed me a little bit because I had subtitles on, and when they said to watch it
Oh,
behind you,
wow.
sometimes it would pop up and sometimes it didn't. So I was kind of annoyed by that because
Man, I
sometimes
cannot imagine subtitles for a game like this when there's like multiple voices talking to you at the same time.
they'll do what they'll do is there'll be subtitles at the top and or the bottom and the top. That's what it'll do.
Okay,
So
that
yeah, the
actually, I
different
guess it sounds like
characters.
that would fit for the game, though. Yeah, throw
Yeah.
their words all over the place.
So yeah,
randomly.
there's a couple times I had children around, so like I want the subtitles because there's a lot of dialogue in here. You got Galadriel with you pretty much the whole time. That's like
Yes.
sounds like a evil Galadriel time, like whispering and telling the story and everything. But yeah,
So
like
you couldn't play this game. It sounds like with like headphones on and doing that kind of experience with it.
I could have and I should have, but like at the same time, still like to have. I don't like doing the 1 year out because I just feel
Yeah.
like so still like to have some sort of stuff. But maybe I'll try more with the sequel there. But no, like when you're talking about the lighting in certain situations, like there's that one section too when you're underground and you're in the water and you're out like that and it's like you're in the dark but it's like there's still like a little bit almost like a Tinkerbell light every once in a while and things are kind of highlighted at times. So yeah, there's lots of good sections that I think they do a good job in a 7, like they don't have to even a 7 hour game. They could have like even held back I think some of those locations, but they didn't, and that's what's really impressive with that.
Yeah, and I liked. Or how did you feel about the kind of full motion video that we got for like? Because Senua, of course, she's an in-game animated character, but then
Yeah.
for all the other characters, like you're kind of getting this weird sort of overlay where you're never seeing their face directly, but you're seeing their face kind of through a thing, and it's an actual actor's face. Did that work for you, or did that take you out of it?
No, it worked for me. Like I said, it added to it too because it just almost like this is you don't know if it's a story of Senyu or if it's just because they even say many times like, oh, you've been here before, or like at the beginning of the game, it's really cool when you do something or if you die, they're like, oh, well, she went left last or something like that, right? They'll say, oh, in a previous story. So that's where it's almost like your character, to me, I look like is almost in a fairy tale memory state where it's a story being told, where when you see the other people, that's why they look realistic because those like real people she's seeing. So no, it worked for me. It's not concerning, but it is daunting when it first happens to you because it's just like, especially the first guy that is live action. I can't remember. I think is it Surtur that is because I feel like he's really big and his face is like right up to the screen. Maybe there's a couple other ones, but that's the one that left the most impression on me was
Right.
Surtur being really close. But no, I like it for this, and that's what I was saying. Like that's the stuff where I feel like we're gonna see Hideo playing with a lot soon, and this to me was like a bigger budget and a couple things. Like I think you're getting more of that. This is almost at times closer to a movie experiences than a game. You know, like you said, the puzzles, which
definitely.
I didn't speak upon. That I do agree with you. There are sometimes too many, too repetitive, just repetition. There's like my biggest example is when you are in the Surtur realm. I liked the idea, but how many times you had to find the locked door, find the fire thing, and then run through fire. I felt like they padded that there's examples throughout the whole game of padding it like that, and I do agree with you that I think taking it down a notch would have been better because I do like some of the puzzles. Some of them were ridiculous. We talked about this. I pulled up a couple walkthroughs because I was like, and some I just found accidentally, and that's one thing I will say is like a negative. I think sometimes there's few prompts on this game. So same thing like Surtur, I really had to look up how to beat him because it didn't tell me like the focus thing.
I had the exact same experience. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just like there's a couple things where I just wish there was a bit more prompts or it's a little less confusing per se, but maybe I'm not as good as I used to be gaming wise, I guess.
No, I mean, we had the same experience with it. I mean, I like the idea, the commitment to the bit, so to speak, of having no UI whatsoever in this game. I mean, even when you are like zooming in on one of those doors, like there's kind of like a glimmer or something, but it's still not like a UI. It's not like a menu popping up. And I think they should have had that stuff in there still because it doesn't really take you out of it too much if you just have a couple of like, here's the basic things you can do with combat. It's not like you need them all the time. Like this game is not terribly complex, so I think they should have thrown a couple in there,
or even just the once. Like same thing when it's like
Yeah.
give the prompt once and then now no, like don't do that prompt anymore. But I agree with you. And then once you get it, it's fine. But yeah, there's a few more. And the last point that I would agree with you on some of your critiques. I think this. If you're going to do that many puzzles, yeah, speed, not only just the padding of them, but I know there is a run option for your character, and I get it because I think they want you to soak in the experience and everything,
Yes.
but it would be nice sometimes to go like just a tad faster, just a little just a little bit, you know. So
Yeah, like if they could speed you up during the puzzle sequences, give you an extra
yes.
15% speed or something. That way you can just run around and experiment with things quicker. But then during the story beats, you can still have that very intentional speed to you.
Mhm.
That would have been ideal.
And even like too, figuring out the whole those things that are the circle and they have the skulls at the bottom, like figuring out how those work at the beginning of the game. That was because sometimes the
They're the
prompts are,
reality gate type
yeah,
things. Yeah,
I feel like
yeah.
sometimes the prompts are really good and they give you a sound or you do see something moves. Then other times because the thing's so far away, you just have to look and like, okay, the bridge has been drawn, you know. And again, I'll be curious how I feel about that when we play the second one now, kind of having that like that in mind now, right? Or just
hmm
certain things where I go, okay, this is gonna probably
If
work
they're using the
similar.
same puzzles in the second one, I'm gonna be, I think, quite
I
salty.
think you're gonna
about
get some
that.
puzzle. I think you're gonna get some similar ones at least. I'd say at least 50%, at
Yeah,
least.
I mean, yeah, I think we'll see some of them again for sure. Um, I wanted to bring this up where, like, this game is so reminiscent of the recent God of War games,
I was gonna ask
which,
you, yeah,
of course, this did predate God of War 2018.
yeah.
But it, of course, we're playing it after we've played those games. But yeah, it's like, man, I could have like headcanoned this game to exist in that universe
Hmm.
to an extent, right? Because like a lot of the mythology stuff is like, is it really happening in this
Yes,
game?
yeah.
And that's definitely up for debate. Whereas in God of War, it's like, no, of course, Odin is in fact right there in front of you. He's standing
Yes.
there, that kind
Yeah.
of thing. But no, I mean, yeah, once again, that Norse mythology, the art style of it, even certain things like when you go and push like a big door, that's like exactly how Kratos does it in those games.
Yeah, I guess you're
The
right.
fact that you have a
yeah.
head like attached to your belt, like
Yeah.
Mimir in God of War. So there was a lot of even like the being in the boat. So that's something you do a lot
At the
in
beginning,
God of War.
which I wasn't sure if I had to drive or not. I wasn't sure, like, am I supposed to steer
Yeah.
this or am I supposed
Yeah,
to
yeah.
not? No, you're not wrong because this made me go, you know what? Like, we were talking about last time on Sidequest, like, what games are, like, kind of the trajectory that, like, bumped God of War 2 up. Because, like, oh, like, because
Yeah.
I know it's all about that stuff. And I was like, oh, I was digging this. I was that, and I really wanted to rewatch The Northman again. Those were the two things after this game I wanted
love
to
it.
do. Yeah, because they speak about Northman a lot. And I just, like, I could see Alexander Skarsgård somewhere walking around here. So, yeah, I haven't even played the game, but you're right on that. Like it
Mhm.
just looked like all the marketing I had seen. So
Yeah. No. Well, you
played
played
one, yeah, of
2018.
course, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. What did you think of the combat? I mentioned how I
Mhm.
very much enjoyed it, even though there isn't tons of depth there. But what did
Yeah.
you think of it?
So it's tough because like I don't think this needs to be like a God of War where you have an axe and that has 10 different things on it or this and that
Yeah,
because
well,
it
these
does have to be
RPG features. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But it's at the same time where it's like I have fun. I think I have fun with it. The smaller the battles are, I think I like the systems where it's kind of you fight. Obviously, once in a while you'll bump into a camp, and it's almost like right when you get into enemies, it feels like it gets into a circular mode where that's you're locked
little
in some
arena,
circle.
yeah.
Yeah, and guys are coming in and out. One again, like you said, no different enemy types, but all the or the design of the characters, the enemies very very cool, whether it is
Really
bigger
good.
bosses, whether it's just the scrubs you fight, like all looking awesome, like to the point where like they should make like a movie of this, of like the design is fantastic stuff. I think for me, I like the fight a couple enemies and then get to your big bosses. I think when there's some, especially near the back end where it's like a lot of enemies and it does get like a tad repetitive, so I think that's where I enjoy it, and I think it's perfect for this. If this was a 30 to 40 hour game, I think that's where, and obviously that changes, right? But
Yeah, you'd need a lot more.
yeah, I think with me, I hit the perfect max of okay. At times, I being tired of it, and maybe that's why I didn't hate the puzzles as much because I didn't mind a little break from it at times because it would not as bad, but it reminded me of some kind of like I've bring this up on the cast before, like Pirates of the Caribbean the movie video game. Like you
Yeah.
got a heavy attack, dodge, light attack, and a kick, and it's just like luckily here you unlock a slow motion, you get a Hellblade like shines like a lightsaber, but. So to me, I think some of the longer sequences without boss battles would get a little much. I almost wish that maybe that would be the opposite for me, that maybe you just take out, other than the beginning when you're learning, take out those and just keep it primarily to boss battles. But there's many times you'll be doing your puzzles, you walk in a circle and you know, okay, it's on. So again, maybe you could do a little less because it's not the most intriguing fighting, but it does feel like God of War in one sense of and I know you might not be able to speak this, but when you do that perfect parry, that's really cool, and like that's like really satisfying. So I still overall liked it, and it's not like anything that bogged it down. I think it's just if you do too much of the fighting back to back or play it in a long way, because I think I did this in about 4.5. I guess I would not 4.5. I guess 5 sittings, but like I kind of that's another.
I think I was
game.
about the same. Maybe 4.
Yeah, but I just feel like because the reason I'm saying 4.5 because I feel like when I did the last day it was very quick. I didn't have much to do left in it. So So I think that's where for me the combat I enjoy it, but it's nothing to write home about. I think it is what it needs to be for this game. Can be a little repetitive at times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny when I was playing through it, I couldn't put my finger on like why do I like this combat so much? Because I'm such a picky person with combat, like even like Shadow of Mordor, and like I bounced off Witcher 3 because like I don't like this combat. Like those, I just hated the combat in those games, and so I just couldn't stand it. And so I'm like, why? What is it about this that I very much enjoy? And I think it kind of came more into focus, pun intended there, when I went back and saw like, oh yeah, this studio for 15 years before this just made action freaking games, like games all about combat. And so it makes sense that they just have it down to like a science at this point. And I think a big thing for me is like just feeling like your hits are doing something. And I feel like just the sound effects in this game are so freaking
Really
good. The audio is of course top notch in general. I played this one. I played it with the headphones on, so I could have the voices in my head. And yeah, just the feeling of every slash is so good. The sounds enemies are making, you just want to defeat them. The recoil when you hit them feels really good. I think the dodge is really fast, and you kind of like the little sidestep, and then the actual kind of roll, which feels great. I was joking with you when we were talking that I did not realize this game had a block until I was watching videos after I was done the whole game. So totally missed that. But like the fact that I didn't even have that one tool out of like 3 or 4 that exist, and the game played really well for me, like that makes me excited for the sequel. That's gonna feel like a new feature for me, getting the ability to block. But yeah, like I just think the feel of it was so good. That's what kept me enjoying it pretty much all the way through until like the last sequence when Hella's at the very end of that bridge and you have like an arena, and then you have the second arena, and then I think you have a third one, and like that other one you are supposed to die, and that's like the story thing. But like that first couple of them, like, man, there are so many enemies here, and I'm like, I'm starting to lose it a little bit, because there are a couple issues I have with the combat, and those are mostly I was pretty bothered by like the always locked on part of the like when you go into a combat arena, you're immediately locked on, which is something that's nice. But I also like in a game with a lock on that I can unlock whenever I want, reposition, move around, switch my camera, make sure I can like see everyone on the battlefield, make sure I see the battlefield in general. And that was something that bothered me because like the enemies behind me, I like that audio cue. I like that that's in there rather than a UI thing. That's cool, but it happens a lot, and like the movement, with a locked on camera obviously is like very kind of limited. And I just found there's so many times where I like glitched in a wall and I was like stuck and someone was hitting me in a wall and then I couldn't move anywhere. And so I think I just wanted the ability to turn the lock off for a second just so I could reposition. And I think that I feel weird with a lot of criticisms of this game because I think even any negatives feelings I'm feeling, I feel like they almost wanted me to feel that. So it's like, I don't know, was this intentional, was it not? But I found like the lack of control in the combat sequences was more annoying than it was like, oh, this is interesting from like a story perspective to make it annoying and claustrophobic, if that makes sense. But there was even certain battlefields, like as you talked about with the little arenas, mostly in the end of the game, that were so freaking small that once again, didn't add that fun claustrophobic, like this is intense feeling, and more just annoying because of the lack of camera control. So I think that was really my only main complaint with it. But otherwise, I really enjoyed the combat like the whole way through, which is surprising because, like I said, there isn't a ton of variety there in theory.
Yeah, I could get the idea or the complaint of wanting to see the full field. I guess I was fine that I could just do the quickly switch to characters, and usually when a new person was coming up, there'd be like some sound effects to kind of, okay, third bad guy, fourth bad guy. So I think usually I would do a hit, and then when I had a second, if people were all not around me, I would just quick fire through the select and see, okay, who is around me, what do I got to do? And I was just always doing the
I found that too, like it wouldn't always go to the guy I wanted it to. You know, if there's
Okay.
like 3 or 4 guys, I would like change the selection, and it would be I'd have to click it like multiple times, and then in that time, someone would be like slashing at me from behind
Yeah.
because I
Oh,
was taking
yeah.
too long. So that would happen. But yeah, like so there's the basic enemy, then there's like the heavy, and then there's the shield guy,
Yeah.
and then there's once you beat Cert, like you'll start seeing like the executioner type, which is like a simplified version of him, and then there's like the double axe guy, who's kind of like a simplified version of Falraven, whatever his name is.
Yeah.
So he's like a simplified version of that. So you'll start seeing those like 2 boss fights, and then there's, I guess you'll see like the dog one once
The
you
dog,
fought that
yeah.
boss fight later. But I the only one that really tripped me up for a bit was the shield guy. I was like, man, I cannot find a consistent way to like get through his guard. And then eventually I
Okay.
figured like, okay, I wait till the very end of his attack, dodge to the left, and he'll like stagger over, and then I can like kick him or just like hit him with a heavy attack, and then I'm good to go. But yeah, I think I found like figuring out the different timings of them was satisfying, even though once again I didn't have the block / parry feature in front of me.
Yeah, I felt the shield guys. I could just kick them pretty easy. Actually, I just led with the
Like
kick
with the
all
actual
time.
kick button.
With the melee kick. Yeah,
I
because
found that it never really did much if I was like going like looking at them face to
Oh,
face.
I think it would always make them stumble for me. I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know
I gotta try
why,
that
but
again.
like it usually worked pretty well, or like you said, the roll. But yeah, I was usually just hitting the kick on them. So
Right. I think for the second game we've seen like there's a spear, and I don't know if I think you do throw it, but maybe it's also for melee attacks. So I'm guessing you have like a sword and a spear, and you can switch between. So
the
a bit
throw
more
would be
variety.
cool. That would be cool.
But yeah,
though.
like
Turn
even
around.
like ranged attacks, like there's the double axe guy. He does have like one attack that's like a ranged thing, but otherwise that's not really a part of the combat. Usually like arena type combat systems like this will have like a couple ranged guys in the back, a couple like guys chasing you down, a couple guys kind of just slowly walking. So that way you have to like always kind of move around the battlefield in interesting ways. But it was interesting that they're really all just melee types in this game. They're always just constantly walking towards you at the same kind of slow speed.
So I'm so curious with the guy that has the double axes when in the boss fight, when he goes like he's like kind of black and airy and you can't attack him. How were you able to attack him again?
Focus once again. The focus
Okay,
button.
focus. Okay, for me, because I didn't know the focus did that at that time. The only way I could do it was doing the block, and it would if you deflected his knives into him, he would come back, and that's when you could fight
Oh.
him. Yeah,
That's cool. I
So
like that
was
there's
how did
multiple
you
ways.
do that? Yeah.
So okay, then how about because there's also later in the game, like the regular enemy types can also have that weird like etherealness to them, where
Yeah.
they're like ghosts. And then
Yeah.
the only way I could get to that was by focusing. Were you also blocking those guys' hits, and that's how you broke them out of it?
Yes and no, because at that point I did know focus did that, so I just
Okay,
thought with that
okay.
first boss
Gotcha.
battle it had to be the deflect, and I didn't know that then because after Surtur I was like, okay, this focus clearly I can use
Yeah.
this for
Did you
other
do?
things.
It sounds like you did Surtur first.
No, I think I did Surtur second. I think I did
okay,
that
okay.
guy first. Yeah, because that's why I didn't
Right.
use focus, and then I did Surtur.
Gotcha. Okay, I did the opposite. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't think it really changes
No.
anything at all, but that's interesting. Yeah. Anything else on the combat? I feel like that was kind of it, right?
No, I'd be looking forward to see like what the spear is, but no, like I said, I think it gets the job done, and it can be fun at times. So, like I said, nothing I would write home about, but there are, like you said, satisfying some very satisfying things. Same thing when I would deflect one of those throwing daggers. Oh, it was good. You get that yellow effect, and it just goes right to them. So yeah,
Right. Yeah. Looking forward to see what they add in the sequel
Yeah.
there.
they'll take deflect out in the sequel. You're like, oh, never got to play
Just
with it.
completely rip it out. And then yeah, so talking about more to do with the kind of I guess puzzles or the other sections of the game. So yeah, you went to Falraven first. Of course, you have the option there which way you
Yeah.
want to go. That's where you have the Align the Ravens puzzles. You have the Reality Gates.
Ugh.
I think the Reality Gates were maybe my favorite in concept, and I think there's just like that one main one you got to do where it's like a huge area, and you have to like get through that castle wall, and then like
Yeah.
reestablish it again to like open the door, then you reestablish it. Like I love
first
the
guide
idea of
that I
that. I
pulled
just
up.
hate how much you have to walk to do
Yes.
that whole sequence.
All
It takes too long. But the one that I really liked was later in the game, past Falraven's area, is like in the swamp area, and there's a section where you have to reestablish a bridge. And I just thought that one, there was no like, it wasn't really a puzzle. It was more just like you just had to do it. It was very obvious to me what I had to do, and I just found like it was kind of like a little figure eight movement. It was really satisfying to go through and do that one. So sometimes it worked. I think it was just if you were ever stuck in this game, that's when it was like, man, moving around these areas and like just
Yeah.
looking at things from different angles, like
Time-consuming.
this is not fun to do. And especially when you get into that one area, during that Fall Raven section, and you have to like, there's like a million ravens, and you just have to go look from the very specific spots. I think it is that same area where you have to go through that wall again. But God, it just takes forever.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. As I talked about earlier, I felt like the portals, there's a learning curve there, and I think your statement just sums it up better in concept than in execution. Again, the more you did with them, the more you'd expect, and the more you'd kind of pertain like, okay, I got to do this, or I could go this way. Yeah. You know, it could take a while because, like you said, yeah, walking around that area, that was a time sink, and that was the first time in this game I pulled up a guide. And I try not to nowadays with puzzles, but at the same time, I still got a retro coming up that I got to hit. You know, I still.
It's funny. I'm the complete opposite now. I'm like, I don't have patience for this kind of thing. If you have a very half-assed, half-baked puzzle in a game, I don't even care. I don't even want to waste my time because I just feel like it. Yeah, most of the time these days, it's like it's just there to make games longer. Like God of War Ragnarok too. Like that bothered the hell out of me. The puzzles suck in that game, and it's like there's no point to this. I understand their point is that like it's more of a pacing thing, you know, to balance out those. You don't. There's not too much combat, as you were saying. So I get why you're doing it, but it's like I wish there was just an ability to turn them off. You know, like I wish in the settings I could go turn off puzzles.
I got to prepare myself because with Indiana Jones, I want to try not to pull up a guide at all. I want to get in the mind of Indiana Jones, and I don't want to, you know, I got to be him. I got to solve these puzzles, you know, but yeah, so I agree with you on the portals. I have a love-hate relationship, but cool aesthetically and cool idea. And same thing, that's when there's other things, but with the puzzles, when you start to look at trees or whatnot, that to me was different. Once you started getting portals, that was really emphasized, like, oh, we are, like, there's some potential supernatural magical elements here, you know. So
yeah, definitely. And then so yeah, get the search sequence. So this is interesting where we didn't talk about this, but at the very beginning of the game, I forget where it is, but they say that with each time you die, the rot will grow deeper in Senua. What did you take from that statement when you saw it in the game?
Well, like gameplay wise or story wise?
I just either like what did you how did it change your perspective of the game, I guess?
Well, gameplay wise, it scared the hell out of me because it said if you rot too much, you have to start over. Yeah. And I was like, I don't want to be in that situation. Like, and I don't know what happens. Luckily, that didn't happen to me. But like, maybe that's not a case. Maybe you can never, because I would be pretty bummed to be 6 hours in and die and then start over.
For a game that's as tedious and slow burn as this is, to have to restart would be insane.
So to me, that worried me right away. And I didn't look it up, so I should have looked up to see. And then gameplay-wise, story-wise, I'm not sure because it's them. I think it's just kind of magical curse element stuff because at first I thought it could be tied to this. I think it's also tied to this darkness that's in her, but at the same time, I guess she banishes the darkness at the end. So it could just be that it is this whatever. But then I feel like the darkness is arguably there or not there, right? Because the father is saying it's there, but she's saying it's not. Dylan says it's not. So that's where that doesn't work as well. If it was an actual, oh yeah, you're cursed, then sure. But this is someone kind of not believing, someone that needs help mentally. And then, but that would almost prove like the dad, right? If like, well, no, it is there. It's like, this is something that's, I think maybe the rot is something she's put upon herself because the way her dad has made her live internally, it's like she's kind of rotting from the inside. So that's how I kind of took it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely I don't know, I guess a parallel with depression, and that she can like only take so much before she's just going to break down and end it all, that kind of thing. So, story-wise, I think it makes sense. Gameplay-wise, I was the exact same as you. Like, wow, that's a bold choice. I did not. I've heard this game is short. Maybe that's why, because it's short because you could have to restart it or something. So I think it was really effective at getting in the back of your head. Now, it actually doesn't do anything. There's no mechanic at all related to it. It is a lie from the developers.
Oh, okay.
But I'm okay with it. I think I think that's a fine deceiving lie in my opinion.
I agree.
Because it changed my relationship with it. Now, I will say I died to cert so many times, and the first couple times I was like, oh shit, I'm going to rot and I'm going to lose. Too. But then it got to a point where I was like, okay, well, I'm actually kind of frustrated because I don't understand how I'm supposed to beat this guy. And then when the solution was to focus, I was like, okay, that was not really that satisfying of a solution. But then I think by like near the end of the game, maybe 60, 70% of the way through, I almost completely forgot about it because I wasn't dying very much, but I got to a point where I'm like, there's no way that the game fully ends. Like maybe you just go to like an earlier checkpoint or something like that. But I feel like it lost its luster a little bit by the end of the game, but it did work for a few hours in terms of getting in my head in a certain way. So I thought it was a cool idea. I don't know how much I want other companies to take that idea of just lying to us about how mechanics work in game, because I think that could be an interesting idea of you being weakened over time or something. 'Cause another thing I think is cool is like the more you get hit in this game, once again, as we mentioned, there's no health bar, there's no UI for that, but you like the screen gets like more and more fucked up as you get hit,
ready and stuff.
and then she also just like gets really defeated. Like it gets to a point where you can't do like combo attacks. Like she's just like exhausted. You can only do like one swing, and then you have to wait for her to kind of heal back a bit. And so I thought that was cool. But yeah, I thought that was a very bold idea that. I wonder, like, the second game can't really do that trick twice. I mean, they can go for it, and for people who skipped the first game, it could work for them. Or they could commit to it and actually do that mechanic. But I think that would be very controversial if they had a mechanic like that in this sort of game.
Wonder if they do it differently, but this time it's because it looks like from the preview she has like a few companions. I wonder if it's you could lose not that you're switching, but like it could affect the story, and whether it's lie or this time it's not a lie. And maybe the more you rot, someone else dies.
Right.
Like, I
like
love
for the sequel, you're saying there's companions in that one?
I thought so, because I feel like when I saw stuff, there's other characters around her. Now, I don't know, that could be a flashback, right? But I felt like when the very first time we saw this game with the big giant, there were people around her. And if that's the case, I think you could do something fun there of, rotting would take some people down. So,
and that could work too, because it's like that could be just like figments of her imagination. So it would make sense too if they just disappear for some way. So that could be interesting.
Also, though, I just actually loved the idea of the rot and the look of it. I loved anytime you die, like that growing up there. I thought that was really, really cool. So even if it meant nothing for the game, I like that idea of every time you die, your character's just getting more and more kind of damaged along the way. So,
and I think it works too, because as we mentioned, there's that moment when you fight Hela later on, and the fight is just so intense that eventually you're just gonna die. You're like forced. It's like one of those fight scenes where you're supposed to die. And it's like, and then it goes to a different cutscene rather than just reloading, and so it kind of gets in your head a bit too, like, oh, did I die too many times or something? So I think that kind of works in that way too. It's kind of like a forced sequence for that to happen. The third sequence, the fire sequence, was this it sounded like it didn't work for you. You didn't like the fires and that part of the puzzle.
Which specifically
during the cert sequences when you have to do like the multiple fire. Is it just because of how many times you had to do it?
That's how many times. I think 2 would have been enough. I think that because I feel like there's the one where you're just like, what I would pitch is one where you're running through the field, and then one where it's like you gotta run through the house of a different direction. Like I feel like 1 sets you up for what it is, and 2 there's just too many. But I like the idea. That's what I did like too, where I saw earlier that sequence later on where it's another, like, you're in the dark and you're seeing things. I like that there was different versions of a vision. It was just the fire all over. So I liked the idea and the concept. I think it was just by the time I got the last one, I was like, okay, I've had quite enough of these fire visions. So like the concept just too many times.
Yeah, no, I can definitely agree with that. Although I the intensity of those scenes really worked for me, especially with the headphones on and just like these people screaming their death cries like into your ears, and it's so loud and intense. So I thought those sequences really, those ones worked for me. But yeah, I think they probably did it 1 or 2 many times more than they needed to. And then we've talked about this, but yeah, like finding the symbols in the environment. I think one thing is like, I wonder, you know how when you get like near the sequence where you are supposed to focus and like the symbols are start appearing everywhere on the ground, like it's hinting. I wonder if those were there always, or if they added that eventually because people were just spending too long getting stuck in these areas, not knowing where to go. I feel like that's why they were added. And then because of that, like that almost kind of takes away from the intrigue for me of actually finding these symbols. Because rather than looking for the symbols, I'm just walking around until I find those, until like those things start popping up in the world. And then I'm like, okay, well now I know I'm in the right spot. Yeah. So I think it almost worked counterintuitive. But I wouldn't have wanted it the other way either. I think it just ultimately they just did too much of those. Or those would be fun like puzzles for like bonus unlocks or something, but it's not really that kind of game either. But I don't know. Good concept, once again, done like way, way, way too many times.
Yeah, and I think you would have been, if you didn't have those letters there, you would have been, I think, even more lost. Because that you would just been
definitely.
You would just be looking like, where could this be? So I appreciate that they added those in there. So
and then zooming along, there's the tests. I guess what do they call them? The tests. whatever it is, you're trying to do all these different challenges in order to get the sword, and you have like those 4 different challenges. You can go do them in any order. So once again, I like that they have that for the Cert Fallraven sequence, and then these labyrinths. So you can go and like do stuff in different. I mean, in this one, you don't really have any information as to what each one does. So there's not really much of a decision there. Whereas they set up a little bit the differences between Fallraven and Surtur, but. Yeah, here you have the labyrinth sequence where you're going through and you're trying to break out of this endless kind of cycle. You have the darkness one, which I liked that one. I thought that one was pretty good.
Like the darkness,
the creepy little weird creatures that you're trying to sneak around. The sound effects they make as well. The labyrinth I didn't quite like as much. It was a bit tedious for my liking. The perspective tower, I thought that was one of the best uses of that, when you're like climbing that kind of wooden almost clock tower and you have the different masks and you have to shape things. I thought that one worked better because it wasn't that challenging. And then there's the swamp one.
I like the swamp one aesthetically. I like I like being kind of waist deep in the thick of it and everything. So
yeah, so that one worked too. And then I guess the other sequences is like these sequence where the wolf Fenrir is chasing you, and you kind of have to run from place to place, keeping in the light. What do you think of that sequence?
I liked it. I don't think it's not something that stood out. Maybe there could have been more cinematics to that in a way where I just felt like it could have a bigger impact. So for me, it's not one like when I'm thinking about highlights of the game, it's not one that pops in my brain of, oh, that's going to be something I remember. Where, like I said, it's not that it's like the most special thing, but just even the look of it, like the swamp, just even the colors I'll remember, just because, I don't know, remind me of gross Shrek. It looked gross. It looked disgusting, where the other one, not anything bad, but it's not anything that's going to stick out to me as far as when I think back about this in a later date.
Yeah, I think I feel about similar as you. What do you think of that boss fight? Or I guess give me the ranking of like the difficulty of boss fights for you. What was the easiest versus hardest?
Oh gosh, so I think for some reason Surtur's probably still the hardest, just because I probably died the most just because I didn't know the focus. But still, even early on, I was finding a cadence for that. I feel like probably the dagger guy would probably be the bottom, I think, because I died a couple times. I think I only died twice, but once you got that going on, under Surtur, I'd probably put the dog the first time you get to them, because they probably are technically harder than Surtur, but I just felt like Surtur, I was still such a newbie. What else we got going on? So we got Surtur, the dog.
I mean, I think it's pretty much just those 3.
Yeah, I think that'd be the way it was. But the dagger guy, I liked, again, aesthetically. It's nothing bad about. But yeah, the dog, I felt a little more prepared going in. And even just stuff like, I think the first time I fought the dagger guy, didn't know about the health death situation, where if you just even don't block for a while, you can kind of just get back some of your stamina. Like, where for a while I just thought, oh man, if I'm already I'm just stuck here, and I would just be fighting fast and everything. But that dog was pretty big, so that'd be my ranking.
Yeah, I think I found Fallraven the hardest, the dagger guy. I mean, I probably died more to Surtur just because I didn't know the focus mechanic yet. But once I figured that out, it's a very easy fight because his moves are so slow and telegraphed. And he doesn't really combo ever. He just does like individual, like maybe he'll do a 2-hit combo, but Fallraven will sometimes do like 3 or 4 hits in a row. Yeah.
No, actually, I think you're right. I should put Surtur last, because actually, like, I feel that's when I died the most. But I think, like you said, once I knew what I had to do, I just beat him immediately. So I just didn't know what to do. Yeah. So it's not that hard. So yeah, maybe I go Surtur, dagger guy, and then the dog.
And then I think I'd put the dog at the bottom for me. I didn't find him that difficult. I don't think I died on him at all. I don't know what it was about it, but I think he once again was big and sluggish, and I knew how the mechanics were at this point, even though I didn't know the block was a thing. But I didn't find that one particularly challenging. I liked it visually. I liked the kind of dark room and kind of having to find him in the shadows with just like a little bit of sound effects, but mostly like the slight rumble in the controller. I thought that was kind of a fun use of, like, they're using the headphones to the max quality. They're doing interesting stuff with the controller for gameplay mechanics. So I think it worked for me in that way.
Yeah, and plus maybe dagger guy wasn't as hard for me because I had that block as well too. So I had that going for me. So because not only would you block the attack, you'd hit him and he'd be damaged. So so if you were playing with the block, maybe he would be different on your list as well. So.
And then yeah, we talked about the demon realm a little bit, the lava, all the
Oh
bodies and
God,
stuff.
yeah,
Like you're not there for very long. There's not much to
yeah.
say about
I
it, but just
want to be there longer.
visually, the sound effects there, just so well done. And I hope we see more weirdo trippy locations like that in
Yes.
the sequel. I'm sure we will. I'm sure they got some of that saved, but yeah, very excited to see some more crazy stuff like that.
Yeah, as far as area wise, that was my standout. I love, like I said, that wall of hands sticking out. It was very well done from start to finish, and I definitely hope there is something. It reminds me, like jumping from sequel to whatnot. I'm hoping, like with the Arkham Asylum games, when you had the Scarecrow and you had those sequences, and it was really trippy. And then
Right.
the sequel, they doubled down. That's what I want here. We're obviously not the same thing, smaller budget, smaller teams and stuff, but same thing where give us a bigger sequence, that give us a big boss battle in that area. You know.
Yeah, I'm excited for that giant that we've seen before.
Yeah, I thought for sure I was gonna have to fight them, but didn't happen. So
And then yeah, there's the shipwreck area. There's not a lot that happens there. It's mostly just walking around. I like the look of it though. And then yeah, like the Hella section with the final battle. I liked the. I don't know. I liked the ground kind of getting laid down in front of you. Hella is probably my favorite visual design of any one in this game. Like just the first time you see her out on the bridge, and like her body is like half intact, half like
yeah,
kind of
really
burning
cool.
away. Her
Yeah.
eyes are so fucking scary. So to me, like just also since she's freaking huge. But yeah, I found her to be particularly terrifying. So even though she didn't really talk, which makes sense, but yeah, I found that part was really well done. And yeah, I like the kind of fake out death there at the end, even if there was maybe a little too much combat in that last sequence.
Yeah, I agree with the too much combat. I love a good fake out death. Same thing about Arkham. Same thing happens there. I love games where you do that. You just don't know if that's what's supposed to happen if you screw it up. And yeah, I like Hella's design here. Much, I'd say, different than what you get most times with Hella. Like I don't recall anything like this. It's almost like closer to like an alien like sort of being and
Yeah,
whatnot. But
definitely. Yeah.
yeah, but no, I enjoyed it as well too.
One thing I was that took me off guard is when you're going into the final battle, one of the voices in your head says, "This is the final battle," and then Senua looks at the camera and says, "Yes, it is," which I thought was like I did not expect a kind of fourth wall-y
Yeah,
break there. I don't know if that's once again a commentary of like we the player are like in our head or something like that. Anything in this game makes me I kind of like overthink of like, oh, what could be like the multiple layers of meaning here, but that definitely stood out to me as being a strange choice.
Yeah, and that's why even at the end when they turn to you and they're like, "Oh, there's more stories," and even at the beginning, like I said, when they're referring to, "Oh, she's done this many times," there is like a story being told aspects. That's why the fourth wall break, I think, not that's a big break, but it works because it is just like almost like this could not be the first time it's happening or the time. This is not when it's happening. You're almost playing the story of what happened, like someone relaying that information to you. So I like those moments because it kind of reminded you, of that kind of aspect of your kind of you're the viewer here, and
Yeah.
they're sharing the story with you. So I liked that.
Let's take our last ad break here, and then we'll talk more deeply about the characters and the story. We'll be right back. Okay, we are back. I think my first question for you, I guess, is what is real in this game and what is not?
Oh, that's a good question. I think for sure
I feel like none of the
baseline.
combat is actually happening. I feel
I
like
don't
all those monsters are. None of those monsters are real, or you are fighting people, but then like she's seeing
Yeah.
them as different than they actually are.
That's what I would say. If it is real, those are not either they're not people or they were people and she's kind of replaying them in their mind like they're people she's killed before, and that's why they have these
Okay.
almost like visual representations, not of death, but they don't look good. There's some rock going on, there's these head masks that they wear could symbolize something. So I think the fighting is either real and it's normal people, that's what she sees, or it was real and it's another aspect of telling the story within a story. I think baseline what happened at least is the stuff with her father's real, the stuff with Dylan trying to, them being in love and wanting to help her is real, his camp and him getting killed is real. So I think all that that stuff, and even about the darkness, who knows what to the extent that is. I could just be, like was it obviously it is an allegory for mental health, but like I don't
think
know
so,
if
yeah.
the father actually was insinuating that she actually had some sort of curse or was just saying like calling her mental health the darkness, right? So I don't know there.
I feel like just because of the time setting, he maybe thought it was a curse, but
Yes.
in that time they didn't really have a concept of
Like people
mental
thought
health.
scientists were witches and wizards, right? Of like, oh,
Yeah,
they did
right.
this. So yeah, so that, but I would say that is what is real. I don't know how much, even again, like her with Hela and like, oh, you could bring him back. I think that is just like a potential bad night acid trip you're on in a camp somewhere where you're just trying to come to the grips with the death of your loved one. But I think that storyline's real. It's just the variations of, what's otherworldly, what's
Hmm.
beyond the mass. But I think that is real. That stuff there.
Yeah, I mean, I
Obviously.
think with Hela, since you don't actually fight her and there's no like physical
Yeah.
thing being like, to me that seems more like a mirror of Senua, and
Mm-hmm.
once again because of like the two sides of her, the regular. I mean, it's not very regular. Hela's looking wacky no matter which way you look at it, but kind of like a regular side, and then like yeah, like that side that is sort of rotted away, and I feel like that's very much her. I don't know, dealing with her own demons, trying to figure out what's going on, and kind of envisioning, I don't know, this character. But I feel like that is definitely, to some extent, supposed to be a representation of her. And maybe that happens when she has these realizations
agree.
at the end of the
Yeah.
game, and she shrinks from being a giant down to being like a regular sized character. And then, of course, there's that moment at the very end when Hela's doing whatever she's doing, and then like the camera shifts angles and shifts back up, and then like Senua was in the place where Hela was, right?
Yes, and that,
yeah.
I agree with you 100%. When it did turn into her, that's just like, okay, what's going on here? And that's where it's like, I think that's just her dealing with grief, and like
Yeah.
Hela is like the physical representation of grief, but just physical in her mind. So
Yeah, so I think she's taking this mythology that is scattered throughout the game and kind of using that to maybe like create these illusions of grandeur of what this world is, what's going on, trying to, I don't know, justify it in some way. But even something like how she sees her mother always as like a face in a rock somewhere.
Yeah.
Like I feel like that's just her looking at a rock that looks a little bit like a face, and then like imagining,
Yes.
like we all do that. We all like see, oh wow, those trees over there
Yeah.
look like something. So I feel like that's very much the same thing going on there. But yeah, I think for me the biggest question is like, yeah, how much of this combat is actually happening? I guess my prediction would be that none, like she's not actually fighting anyone, like she's just swinging at the air
Yeah.
and envisioning these things. But I definitely could see it being something else.
Yeah, I think it could be. I don't know if she's even physically swinging. It's just her playing it out in her mind, especially stuff like near the end. It's could just be her visualizing like the thought of wishing to kill the people that took Dylan and some of those people and stuff. So, yeah, I do lean to what either way that she's probably not fighting. Like I don't think anything's raising these actual creatures, but who knows? Maybe something will happen in the sequel where we look at it as like you said before in God of War, all that stuff's happening, right? These kind of characters and whatnot. So maybe there'll be stuff in the sequel to lean one way or the other where they'll play it more down the middle, and then I'll go, okay, then it is that, or there's something where it is, oh, these things are risen from the dead. And you go, okay, that's what I was supposed to take from the first one. So
And then how about in terms of like the runes and like the puzzles as we're talking about there, in terms of like things physically changing in the world, like where do you think that falls into? Or like these doors, like were these doors locked and she did something to open them, or were these doors always technically open but she just didn't actually push them open because of the illusions once again?
yeah, I think it's supposed to, because yeah, I don't think any of that's happening. I don't think she'd have to do some obviously puzzles to do X, Y, and Z. I think it's almost like a set 7 stages of grief sort of thing, or whatever it might be, or depression. So it's kind of you're unlocking, and because you get to Hela and you've kind of come to terms with Dylan. He says goodbye and all that stuff. So I feel like it's just kind of unlocking parts of your mind where you go, okay, this is, I can't get from this point to this point, And like we said, the small little choices, I think that just shows, okay, everybody else has a different way to get where they're going, and hopefully you can get to being in a better spot. And I imagine she's still looking pretty rough at the end, but I think
Yeah.
she's going to be hopefully in a better way. But that's what I'm curious where. And that's where it comes in the fighting, what you do in a sequel if you feel like you've kind of resolved this trauma, right? So,
Yeah, I mean, that will be really interesting to see just in terms of, yeah, do we go back to her clan or what's left? Like her mother
Yes.
is dead. Obviously, Dillian's gone. What is do we know the fate of her father? Was he dead too, or is he still alive?
I don't
by
think
the end of it?
I
can't
don't
recall.
remember them revealing the fate.
I think,
could be
yeah,
wrong.
because I think she just kind of left after, and he was still alive at that point when
Yes.
when the camp was raided.
So that could always be a loose end brought back.
So yeah, we could go back to do that, but yeah, you're right. Like there is very much a, I don't know. It's weird. Like this game does close. It is a fairly conclusive ending, but there
Yes.
is still very much a setup of like, oh, there's more to be done in
Yeah,
this
there's more
world.
stories. Yeah, so
And like obviously the voices are still in her head, so it's not like she's. I mean, I don't think psychosis in that way is something that you can truly recover from, other than
Yeah.
like the temporary relief via certain drugs or something like that. So obviously that's still a part of her. They're still with her. So even though she's come over like some of these demons, there's definitely more that's going to happen. Looks like there's a spider on your wall behind. I can't tell if it's a spider or something crawling up your wall behind you there. Sorry, I got very distracted by that.
it is a little bug. Yeah, he's here for the review. Yeah, it is a bug.
I'm starting to like see things in the background.
Oh no.
But yeah, it is an interesting game to get a sequel, because the story that we're telling here feels very much like a one-off. But yeah, as we just
Yes.
mentioned, like they definitely left the door open when they closed the last game out. So I think probably for the last few years they've been developing the story, working on this game, planning it going forward.
Yeah, the last dialogue is literally there's more stories to tell, and I think that's also telling, right, too, because I think that's something like there's a quote about, you know, when you're a depressed person, there's going to be days where you're just depressed, but you kind of have to work through. Like it's not so, like you're not like cured, you know, like, and that's with anything you can go through in life, right? Like even just grief of losing someone, it can get better, but there's always still going to be days. There might be a moment where a memory flashes something, and you're bummed out, you're down because X, Y, and Z, right? So it's not. There's not a cure, even clinically or drugs wise. Just like, okay, now I'm over that, and they'll never affect me again. Plus, there could be other things. Like if the dad is alive, I'd imagine that character coming back. And even just the thing is, even if the dad was dead, the character could come back in a non-physical state, right? Like some situation could remind her of X, Y, and Z, and that being the dad character. So that's where I think with more stories to tell, I think they can even tackle different stages or different types of anxiety, mental health, depression, whatever it may be, because there's unfortunately like a big variety, and it's not a one fits all sort of circumstance.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
yeah,
One thing too with Senua as a character and the actor here, Melina Jurgens, as I mentioned,
so good.
it's great. Like she was a video editor at the studio, and she was kind of
really?
like filling in while they like find someone. Like she was just doing the mocap stuff and like acting in that position until they found someone to be the character. But then she did that long enough and she got good enough at it that they
That's
just
awesome.
ended up casting her in that role. So I think that's so cool. And then I'm sure she did a lot of the editing of certain scenes too, if she was still an editor as well. So I think that's a very cool story. And then to go on to win the game award, as I don't know, I think that's pretty meaningful for someone like
that's
that.
awesome.
So really, really cool stuff. And then obviously she's back for the sequel. I'm curious what her career will look like post Hellblade. I don't even know if she's done other acting things since then.
Yeah.
But I hope she does. I mean, obviously it's maybe slightly different with an actual performance where she's doing the mocap and stuff, but then you can change things, of course, in the animation side of things. But yeah, I'd be curious to see what she does after the sequel here. Like if let's say they don't make Hellblade 3 right away, if she continues to work at Ninja Theory and is doing video editor stuff, maybe doing other acting roles with different projects, or if she goes on to, I don't know, act elsewhere for other games. I'm curious to see what her trajectory looks like, but very cool. And she did a amazing job, of course.
Oh yeah, fantastic. No, I didn't know that story, so that's a fun fact. That's fun how that worked out.
And then also like the voices, like we've talked about them in passing, but all the voice acting in this game is fantastic across the board. Like the voices, and I don't know even if that's her just saying these things as well, because I don't know her voice well enough, but like doing all the little voices of like, turn around, oh, go that way, go up there. She's not going to go up there. And then like the little cackling and laughing, like that stuff is so good. And like obviously with the headphones too, the way they like throw it to all the different parts of the headphone as well, just to really throw you off. Like it's so well done. The guy who does the voice acting for like all the lore stones, and then like at one point the guy who has like the really grovelly like deep voice, who I think it's like your father, but it's like a more demonified father. Like freaking amazing performances all around. I just thought everyone crushed it in this game.
That gravelly voice, I had to look. I was wrong, but I thought it was our new Galactus because he sounds like that actor from The Witch, like Ralph Ensign, but it wasn't. But he has a very similar voice. But that voice is stellar. So
Yeah. I don't know. What did you think about Dillian as a character, the love interest, the forgotten love or the lost love in this?
Yeah, if there's any more, it's tough because maybe that's something you died in the sequel. I don't think there's much depth with him, and not that it's meant to be because I just feel like he's just like as like just a shining light. Like he almost has like an angel stats, especially very cool shot at the end when she's lying down and he's below her and he's like talking
Right.
to her.
Yeah.
Very cool imagery, like very well done stuff. So I think it's like a little one note, but it's not. I think because he's dead, that's maybe the reason why. Because it's, obviously I don't know how long she also knew him because she knew him that was going to run away with him. Dad didn't let him, and all this bad stuff happens. So I think with her, she just kind of has this one image of him in her mind. So and that's the same thing. I don't think there's time, and it's not necessarily needed to get into the crux of their relationship, and he doesn't feel like a full character himself, but I don't know if he needs to be in for her story. So I think he works as kind of like this ray of sunshine in a way, and a
Right.
lack
Yeah.
of better words. So
Yeah, he's definitely more of like a plot device than he
Yes.
is a character that, fills in their own personality. Which once again made a good point there of like how much did she really know him before he died because of the way their family and clan dynamic was set up. Like maybe she couldn't actually spend that much time with him, so it was more like the idea of him than anything. So she kind of has to project all these things, and we do get like that flashback sequence where she met him in the first place when she was watching him train, and that's where she learned all that she knows about combat, which I guess it's because she did it many times, watching him over and over again. So kind of a cute scene there, and obviously not very much are you seeing like bright sunny meadows in this, so they'll have that flashback. Of course there's all sorts of effects on there too, but it was a nice little change of pace, and I think it was like, you could have done a lot more flashbacks of other sequences, but I think we kind of got a lot of that. Like the fire sequences, you can kind of insinuate that that's an experience-ish that she had with her mother or with just like the rest of the clan, whoever else was killed during those sequences. And so I feel like you don't really need actual flashbacks, but I think that one was well placed. But yeah, we didn't necessarily need more of it to tell that story with him.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, I liked that sequence you talked about, the being like, because there's not much of it. It's always, I do appreciate that lots of times, especially early in the sequence when you'll beat some bad guys, it will get lighter out, the darkness goes away. But that wasn't like obscene, like a very happy amount, right? And I like that. Did remind me of one thing. I'm not sure if it just was the main place I had it, but it was close to one of those sequences where I had to pause the game. But unfortunately, the dialogue kept going on. But then when I unpaused, I'm like, oh, I'm sure it'll come back. But it didn't, and I didn't get the subtitles either, so I had to YouTube it. But yeah, so like, because I paused because I had to go help one of the kids, and just gave all the subtitles. It was paused where she was, and then but when I went back, it was just the music and her. So it's like such a weird glitch that played the scene out and the music, but all the dialogue was gone. So it was funny. But
I think that happened for me too, where I paused at one point,
Yeah.
but like the audio still goes on.
Yeah, but I found it. It's okay. I found it later on.
Nice.
So
I don't think the music for the most, like, I think the audio design in terms of like sound effects and stuff and voice acting, as I mentioned, all stellar. I don't think the music did a lot for me, but I actually did like the 2 or 3 songs that we got like right towards the end of the game, like when you're doing the Hella sequence and there's more like hopeful music that's leading up to this kind of reveal, and then like that actual music that plays during the very like final cutscene. So much of this game is very dour and dark, and so to have some hopeful themes is nice. But I also just thought like that was the more creative, fun music for me. The rest of it, I can't even really recall what it sounded like, to be honest.
I agree with you, but at the same time, it's like because the sound design's so good, it's one of those. It's like it's almost not needed, right? If there's some
it can take the backseat in this one.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like it's almost like I almost take you out if you had concurrent music to the whispers and the sound design. So I agree with you where I think it was all right, but it's kind of like it's almost like the combat for me. It's like what it needed to be in this situation. So
another we mentioned some God of War similarities. Another thing that I found interesting is God of War is kind of famous for having like this kind of one shot element to it, where it's one whole long sequence. And this game doesn't really have that, but during that lore stone, or not the lore stone, the sequence when you're going through the shipwreck and then you're trying to get the sword, like when you go up to all those totems, you like zoom in on them and then like the screen zooms in and then you zoom out and you're in this new place. And so I feel like parts of this game actually did a bit of that, of trying to make it one long cohesive thing. She just unfortunately gets knocked out like too many times, where like that would be a fade to black and wake up anew. But that was kind of another funny similarity there.
yeah,
The lore stones, it's something I'm kind of mixed on. Like it's kind of like a collectible. It's something else to do in the games. I think for me, like one weird thing with them was like if you walk too far away, the audio would like cut out.
Yeah, I hate when games do that.
And
Just
like a
keep
lot of
playing it
times,
over. Just
yeah, a
go.
lot of
Yeah.
times it would happen when I'm not even like there's nothing else that's happening. There's no other dialogue or sound that's happening. So it's like, why is this fading out? It doesn't really make sense.
Yes.
And to me, I didn't really find them that they added all that much. Like they're just filling in some like Norse mythology, and I found like maybe 10% of them felt like, oh, this is an interesting parallel or simile to like what's going on in the game right now. But most of the time, I feel like it wasn't. It was just some other random story or like telling me about some character that wasn't really related. And I know a lot of these names now from just like Marvel, and that they use the same mythology and also God of War. But yeah, I didn't really care much for those. So yeah, I don't know. I'm curious what they'll do for that kind of thing. I feel like they might have that in the next game too, because good to have some sort of collectible, I suppose. But yeah, they didn't add much to me.
Yeah, to me, like there's times where I didn't even go to them because I just didn't feel the need to. And
If they're too far away, it's like I don't want to walk there and back.
And I agree with you. Where if they would have played over all the time, then sure. But the fact that was sometimes you had to stand there, it wasn't. Could have been better done. So not anything that not a highlight for me, I'll say.
Yeah. I mean, and then I guess my just last like story thoughts is we've already mentioned this, but I just feel like the angle of the psychosis that she's experiencing is so well done in this game, just like from the visuals, connecting it with like how the way the puzzles interact and how it interacts with the combat system, and then just the dialogue, the voice acting. Like they did a really, really good job with that. I think that's what this game is kind of all about, and that central idea. And I feel like they really, really nailed that. So it's cool to see, rather than telling some really complex story, this isn't really a complex story. You're kind of getting, I don't know, very basic little facts here, but it's more like just the way it's told is why it's so interesting. So they just did such a good job there. Yeah. Any other points on this game? Any other notes that you had?
No, I just again agree with what you said. The last points there, I think they knocked that out of the park. I think, like you said, with the story being what it is, I think if for me those parts and those sections aren't as good as they are, this game might not. I maybe wouldn't be inclined to go back and do the sequel or continue on. Like, okay, that was fun. I don't think it's a bad game, but with other things as far as like the size of it, the combat, some other things are like, okay, this is not worth returning to. But no, I think we hit on everything. I think it was for me, like I said, an enjoyable experience that I'm happy to finally cross off the list. And I am curious to see what they story-wise and even gameplay-wise, just in general, what do they do? What do they change? What do they keep, etc.? So
yeah, I think we're in a similar boat where like in terms of story stuff, like execution-wise, I don't think they need to change a thing. Like they just I don't know what this next actual story is going to be, so maybe they want to do something in terms of that. But I think for me it's mostly just like I would love if the puzzles weren't as numerous as they are, or if they were less tedious. But I honestly, like, I might just have a guide open in the background throughout it, and if I bump into a puzzle, just be like, no thanks. If I don't like them, maybe they're a lot better this time around. But in terms of the combat, like, I don't really like. I just want maybe a little bit more to just add some variety. Like this worked for me for 8 hours of playtime and what is maybe 2 hours worth of combat or something. I think if they have a new weapon type or one new feature or a couple new enemy types, that's like probably all I need. I think I'm good enough with that. But yeah, I think that would be my only request for the sequel. Anything else from you that you'd want them to do?
yeah, I think I agree with you as far as puzzles or certain sequences. I get that maybe to make the game longer, they might do that. Or if it is puzzles, even a bit more variety of them and not just
not the same ones over and over and over again.
Yeah, exactly. That spear doesn't sound too bad when you do that. And then I don't think I would, like I said, we want a bit more prompts or maybe not complete handhelding, but maybe a little more. But I don't think that'll change. I think they'll keep it the way where there will be times where I'm going to be like, okay, I got to go to YouTube or pull up a Reddit and be like, oh, okay, this is what you do now. Now, maybe with a sequel, I'll try a bit more things right away because like I said, I'm programmed that way. So that I don't think will change. And I guess that's kind of fine. That's the way they're going. But no, hopefully, like I said, just some bigger set pieces in some of those scary places. But no, I think for the most part, I guess maybe I have faith. Maybe it's almost like the only place they can go is down, and not trying to sound bad, but it's like I like to recapture some of those story beats and the how elusive they were. Not an easy
Yeah.
task, you know.
Good point.
So,
Yeah, like the shock of what this game is in
yes,
terms of
yeah.
how some of those mechanics and the audio and stuff works. Yeah, you can't like we're surprised with that trick twice. I mean, yeah, there's new tech in, like since the years past. I
Hmm.
feel like one thing that has changed a lot though in the last 7 years is like the accessibility push in games. So for that reason, I actually could see them having more prompts or like in the
True.
options the
Yeah.
ability to select more of that stuff on there. So I'd be curious if they do that. But yeah, any final thoughts, Travis? Do you want to throw a number on this?
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
I would give it about a 9. That's where I'd be. Like I
Ooh,
said,
wow,
yeah.
okay.
For me, it's definitely because usual with the games, I come down to the story, and I think the story, like you said, is very basic, but I think it's well done, and it just takes you on an experience. I like that. It
Hmm.
feels very kind of almost A24 trippy at times, which I always appreciate when it's well done, because that stuff, when not well done, can, I think, make something a failure, because then it's like it gets too confusing. The imagery is just imagery for the sake of imagery. Like, you got to be careful when you do those dreamlike scenarios. If there's even a few things off, they become tedious to watch. Like, okay, I already don't understand this point. I don't have all the facts, and now there's this, like, what's this huge monster or huge, like, why is this big guy right up to my face talking to me? But it all worked, and it's I think they take a lot of risks with this one. But overall, no, I had a great time with this one, and I'm interested to see where it goes. And yeah, kudos to this team. I haven't played those other games, but I would venture to guess, I don't know if any of the other games are on the quality that I would enjoy to this extent, because I don't think they're doing any
Right.
of these type of
I
story
think they
beats.
definitely leveled up with this one. It seems
Yes,
like. Yeah.
that's what it feels like. It feels very much kind of like
Well, maybe
Guerrilla.
actually, I think I've heard good things about that Devil May Cry game. Maybe they
True,
crushed it
yeah.
with that one too.
Yeah, it feels very much like just based off what they looked at, or what I looked at, it feels like Gorilla when they did like Killzone to Horizon, where it's like, okay, this is you've evolved, so good on them.
Yeah, yeah. No, we've echoed a lot of the same thoughts, but I'm very glad I finally played this game. Finally, have played any game from this studio, and I think they did the most exciting thing for me, which is that after I was done with the game, I just couldn't stop Googling their history and like looking at their older games and being like, oh, this is going on my backlog. This is going on my backlog. I can't wait to check out some of these older games. I'm excited for the sequel. But yeah, I when I was thinking about this, in terms of my rating, I was somewhere between like a 6 and a 7.5. I think I'm gonna even it out to just an even 7 on this, and I think it's because like some of that puzzle stuff and just the
Yeah.
designer that really dragged it down for me. And then like the other stuff is all really solid, but it's still like was never really at like that 10 caliber. So I think that's where it's gonna balance out for me. But yeah, very excited for the sequel. Like we said, we'll probably be a couple weeks out from Sidequest, not next week's episode, but the one after. But when we do talk about it, we will both probably have beaten the game, so we can have a full spoiler discussion on it. So I'm excited to do so. Travis, this was very fun, kind of one episode retrospective. Thank you for joining me. Thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you again next time. Bye bye.